Let's get this out of the way. No, zombies are not real. Yet. But after spending 400 hours in Call of Duty Zombies and 20 minutes doom-scrolling NIH research papers, I've come to a conclusion that science does not want you to know. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of military interest. Let's begin. Part 1. The setup, or the only thing scarier than 100 manglers is rabies. You've seen it before. The horde, the shambling, the moaning. Viruses are not alive. Not really, anyway. They don't eat, breathe, or dream. They're just genetic instructions in a protein code. Like a USB drive that plugs into your cells and forces them to print more copies of itself. You don't even know you're infected until your body goes, wait, hang on a second. This is not my font. I write code in Times New Roman, but this shit is wingdings, bro. There are two main types of viral strategies: DNA viruses and RNA viruses. These are not Pokemon evolutions, they're just different formats for saying your cell is my cell now. DNA viruses are like the old school types. Think 1997 Microsoft Word. They break into your cell's nucleus, the control center, and politely insert themselves into your genetic schedule. Your cell, being polite and easily manipulated just like me, goes, cool, I guess this is what we do now, and starts producing viral parts like it's the new company policy. RNA viruses, on the other hand, are like the chaotic startups of virology. They don't wait for the nucleus. They set up shop right in the cell's main factory floor, the cytoplasm, and start printing t-shirts with their logo on them. Fast, sloppy, and scalable. They make typos constantly, which is bad if you're proofreading, but great if you're trying to evolve fast enough to jump species. They essentially set up shop like a drop shipping store. Fast, low effort, and somehow making millions of copies of complete fucking garbage. So some viruses bring their own equipment. Others hijack yours. Some even have reverse transcriptase, which you can think of as a tool that converts their sloppy RNA into neat little DNA so they can basically sneak into your nucleus like a Trojan horse, but in a resume format. This is how retroviruses like HIV work, by pretending to be part of you until they actually are part of you permanently. It's not just infection, it's identity theft, but with protein synthesis. So you might ask, wait, how does the body not notice any of this happening? Well, it usually does, eventually, but by the time it realizes something's wrong, the virus has already turned your cell into a Times Square bootleg merch stand cranking out more virus particles than you can spell. And then those particles leave, and do it again, to more cells, to more people. This is how pandemics happen, not with explosions, but with copy-paste. Sometimes it's a bit too effective though, but that's not actually good for the virus. Take rabies, for example. Rabies doesn't just kill you, it rewrites you. It targets the limbic system, the part of your brain responsible for fear, aggression, and TikTok comment sections. It makes you hydrophobic, scared of water, so you can't swallow. Why, you might wonder? So you foam at the mouth with concentrated rabies in the saliva, because it just so happens that rabies spreads through saliva. What you end up with is a creature that cannot talk, cannot think, and is foaming at the mouth with saliva full of concentrated rabies. Compound on that the brain now running on pure aggression and fear, and the individual in question bites anything near it, dying shortly thereafter. See, that's the problem here. It could never spread fast enough to cause a rabies pandemic because it just kills the host in such a fast time frame. It's one of the only things where if you start exhibiting any symptoms, you're as good as dead. So on a more serious note, if you live in an area with rabies or get bitten by a bat, please get the vaccine immediately, because as soon as you get that first symptom, usually a headache, you're 100% dead. And there's no hope for you. But imagine if rabies could spread faster, or mutate, or be airborne. Now imagine the Pentagon looked at that and went, yo, hang on a second. What if he made that shit tactical? Which brings us to part 2, Group 935 and the scientific problem of ethics. Group 935 in the world of Call of Duty Zombies is your classic morally bankrupt science team. Their motto might as well be, if it glows, we inject it. They created zombies using a compound from space called Element 115, which does things like reanimate corpses, open portals, and accidentally cause severe lore inflation. Now, is Element 115 real? Kind of. It's based on moscovium, which is a real element that exists for about 0.65 seconds before ceasing to exist harder than your will to live on round 58. It's basically useless in real life, but in fiction, it's the dark matter equivalent of Red Bull. Here's where it gets weird though. There are real-world analogs to what 115 does. Reanimating tissue? Not entirely impossible. We've already brought pig brains back to partial activity hours after death. We've got fungi that control ants like Bluetooth meat puppets. We've got parasites that turn rats fearless and make them approach cats like it's a career fair. So yeah, nature is working on it. And with the right combination of synthetic neurology, viral engineering, and a complete lack of moral oversight, you could probably make a test subject bite. You might not get a hellhound, but you might get an angry man with a tremor and a vendetta. So, Florida man. But as it turns out, the only thing more scary than the Pentagon and whatever they're up to is, of course, nature. Part 3. Parasites. Creatures that major in mind control. Parasites are where things get theatrical. These aren't just diseases, these are creatures with hobbies. Take Toxoplasma gondii. It lives in cats, but spreads through rodents. Problem is, rodents tend to avoid cats. So T. gondii said, hey yo, what if I just rewired your fear, bro? And it does. Infected rats lose their fear of cats. Some are even attracted to the smell of cat urine. A rat ends up basically seeing danger and going like, hey, so you be saying something we gonna be. Now imagine that principle applied to humans. A parasite that doesn't just make you sick, but makes you seek out the thing that kills you. All it needs is a slight nudge to aggression, a tiny dimming of empathy, and a little confusion around whether or not biting is appropriate social behavior. Quick horrifying aside, yes, Toxoplasma is already in us. If you've ever owned a cat, congratulations, you might already have Toxoplasma gondii in your brain. No symptoms, just pure vibes, honestly. Studies have actually shown that people infected with Toxo are 2.7 times more likely to die in a car accident, more likely to take risks like riding motorcycles or opening incognito tabs for academic reasons, and in men, higher testosterone levels and a greater tendency to ignore rules like traffic signs, the concept of flossing, and gravity. Why? Because the parasite doesn't want you safe. It wants you risky. It wants you edible. In rats, that means basically cuddling with cat piss. In humans, it's way more subtle. Slightly worse judgment, slightly dulled fear, slightly more willing to say, yeah, I can totally jump that gap on this rental bike. Some scientists think it might affect our cultural psychology at the population level. Entire societies nudged slightly toward fearlessness. Or, you know, Florida. And again, this is not sci-fi. This is already happening silently in the background right now. Anyway, back to the zombie stuff. So we of course got cordyceps, which is a fungus. It takes over the bodies of ants, climbs their nervous systems like a ladder, and makes them climb to high places. Why? To explode and rain spores on their friends. Again, that's not a plot. That's not a Black Mirror pitch. That is a thing that happens right now. Just very small and mostly in the jungle, which is of course nature's testing ground. Clarification. Cordyceps cannot infect humans because we're not ants. Yet, cordyceps is terrifying, but not to you, only to ants. See, it doesn't just want to infect ants, it's built for them. Their nervous systems are simple, predictable, and their exoskeletons are made of chitin, a crunchy little substance fungi being made out of it themselves are very good at breaking down. Cordyceps knows how to navigate that like it's running a macro in Excel. Humans, on the other hand, are squishy sacks of inconsistent meat. We don't have chitin. We don't have ganglia in our legs. Our immune systems are more complex. Our body temperature is higher. And our brains are less, ant-shaped. It's like trying to run a toaster manual on a PS5, so could it evolve to target humans? In theory, yes, anything can, but it would be like remodeling a microwave to hunt elk. Like, it's not efficient, it's not gonna happen anytime soon. So no, you won't be climbing a tree and erupting into spores on purpose. That is, unless TikTok makes it a trend, of course. Now, part 4, bacteria. Slower, stranger, but still horrifying. Bacteria, unlike viruses, are fully alive. Tiny little single-celled organisms with all the tools they need to survive, reproduce, and be a general menace. If viruses are USB drives full of doom, bacteria are the traveling salesmen of biological chaos. mobile, self-sustaining, and hard to get rid of. They reproduce by binary fission. That means one cell splits into two. No parents, no childhood trauma, just infinite cloning. That's it, no drama. Under perfect conditions, one bacterium could become a billion in less than 12 hours. It's less reproduction and more exponential math homework. Just copy, paste, infect another host, repeat. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, and suddenly your immune system is being hit with a bacteria-sponsored pyramid scheme. So some bacteria can also trade genetic material with each other through something called horizontal gene transfer, which sounds like a yoga move, but is really just microbial Tinder. They swipe right on useful genes like antibiotic resistance or better toxin production. Take Treponema pallidum, also known as syphilis. Left untreated, it enters the brain. Late-stage infection causes personality shifts, hallucinations, paranoia, and neurological collapse. Historically, some of the world's most infamous tyrants and dictators, like Napoleon, Hitler, Mussolini, and possibly even Lenin, are suspected to have suffered from syphilitic insanity, which raises an uncomfortable possibility. Maybe history's worst decisions were made by bacteria. Another example, Clostridium tetani, the bacteria behind tetanus. It doesn't make you aggressive, but just locks your muscles up so you become a rigid, trembling statue. Not a zombie, but adjacent, like if COD zombies had a low mobility difficulty setting. So in theory, a zombie-style infection could be bacterial, but it would be very slow, indirect, and not very cinematic. You'd get weird behavior changes over time, so not sudden outbreaks. People wouldn't sprint through alleys, they just slowly stop filing taxes, move to the woods, and start hoarding glass jars. That's not a horror movie, that's just a documentary on people who say, we're off grid now. Now here's where it gets weirder. You're not just sometimes infected with bacteria. You are bacteria, at least mostly. There are more bacterial cells in your body than human ones, roughly 39 trillion bacterial cells to 30 trillion human cells. In essence, you are being ratioed by your own microbiome, and they don't just hang out. Your gut bacteria influence your digestion, your immune system, and yes, your mood, your thoughts, and your risk tolerance. Studies have linked certain gut bacteria to levels of anxiety, depression, and even decision-making. There's evidence that your craving for sugar might not be your craving, it might be theirs. We like to think we're in charge, but the truth is your behavior is subtly co-authored by trillions of microbial co-pilots, and they want you to stay alive. Not because they care, but because they live in you. It's the ultimate hostage situation. If you go down, they go down. Part 5. So how would a real zombie pathogen work? Okay, so let's be scientists about this. Here's what we need. Transmission method: saliva, blood, airborne droplets, NFTs. Onset time: fast, instant panic, no time to tweet a thread about it. Behavior modulation: remove fear, boost aggression, kill empathy. Basically Twitter, but biological. Host survivability: the pathogen can't kill too fast. A zombie that dies too quickly is like a tweet with 0 likes, 0 retweets, 0 bitches, no nothing, so pointless in other words. The host has to keep wandering, biting, spreading the chaos like a really, really shitty TikTok trend. The result? Something that doesn't just kill, but performs, spreads, advertises. And you wouldn't see it coming because when it arrives, it won't look like chaos. It will look like a minor outbreak, a weird hospital report, an isolated case, then a cluster, then a panic, then someone in a lab coat blinking at the news and saying, hang on, wait, didn't we create that? Now if you're wondering why this doesn't exist yet, well, humans have decent immune systems, more sophisticated than the average ant who's basically Cordyceps' walking D&D character sheet. And evolution doesn't favor a pathogen that kills the host before it even spreads. That's just bad business. But biological warfare? Yeah, that's a different story. The Pentagon joke is not just a joke. In World War II, Japan's Unit 731 notoriously weaponized plague-inflected fleas and other horrors against China. Biological warfare as grim as any zombie outbreak, but with a lot less cinematic charm and a lot more human tragedy. And they were planning on doing the same thing to San Diego mere weeks before they got nuked. So, the idea of weaponized zombies isn't just fiction, it's just really unethical history. Conclusion: the real infection. In the end, zombies are not just fiction, they're a possibility. Not just because the undead will rise from graves, but because your brain is already a battlefield in a sense. Pathogens, parasites, and bacteria have been rewriting human behavior for millions of years. The only reason you have not noticed is because they're real subtle about it. Strategic, patient. The real horror isn't a rotting corpse chasing you down an alley. It's a tiny invisible thing quietly asking, "Hey, what if you took just a little more risk today?" You'll never hear it, but sometimes you'll feel it. And that's when the infection begins. If you enjoyed this strange little detour into the undead science behind COD, thanks for sticking with me through the weird, and consider supporting me on Patreon and or YouTube members to get early access to videos like this one and more. Now go wash your hands, maybe hug a cat very cautiously, and remember, the real horror might just be what's already living inside you. And as always, thanks for watching.